our crappy culture. So I'm looking through the magazines, and some of this just comes into my ken, but like the women's magazines, other people have made this point, but the women's magazines have been essentially colonized by the left and feminism. There are no women's magazines, no major women's magazines that are run by right-wingers or by people who are not feminists and people. And you know, one of the things that I'm really interested in that I want to start talking about more is the way that by owning our culture, we don't even realize, we on the right don't even realize that we are being made to apologize for the simple truth. I was talking about it a little earlier today about how the transgender hoopla, the foofra. Nobody cares about transgender people. Nobody cares that there are some people who have problems with their gender. They have to work it out as best they can. You know, God bless them, let them go in peace. Nobody cares about that. Nobody wants to hurt them. But the idea that we must be forced to recognize their illusion as the truth is a ploy to put us in a mental mindset where we think the party the government has the say over what is true instead of us. What's that? Yeah, 2 + 2. It doesn't even equal 5. It equals what the party says it will. That was 1984. It's not that it equals 5. It equals what the party says it equals, and that's the whole thing. And when I think a lot about this about feminism is that they have made it so we apologize for thinking that men should be men and women should be women. I hear this all the time. And I really believe, I know I'm always picking on superhero movies. I like some superhero movies. I think there are too many of them. I really believe that superhero movies have become a thing because they let men be men, basically. Nobody can attack or criticize Superman for being super, right? But if a man is super, then everybody says, well, why does the man get to do it? Why shouldn't we put a strong woman in there? Because there are no strong women. That's why. Because in reality, the strongest man is always stronger than the strongest woman, right on down the bell curve. So that's the way that's going to work. And that creates certain responsibilities and certain notions between us, like the way we treat each other, and the fact that women have babies changes the way we treat each other, and the fact that women are women changes the way they have a different attitude changes the way we treat each other. Right this minute, everything seems like the left seems like it is trying to dismantle everything. I think it was in Cosmopolitan recently that they had a piece basically trying to normalize incest. This is what it's like to fall in love with your brother. That was one. And there's a new website called Open Minded, which with their hashtag Accept Love campaign, where they're trying to sell us polygamy. Okay. And the Huffington Post loves this. They just love this. They're pushing this thing, and they say this moment will be remembered in history, if not for the complete destigmatization, then for making great strides in acceptance for LGBT relationships and individuals. This is from Open Minded, talking to the Huffington Post. We are finally allowing people to rightfully so define themselves. If we can accept that a man can love a man and vice versa for women, why then is it so difficult to wrap our minds around the concept of loving more than one person? And here is a tape Open Minded put out in which this guy with I think he's got 4 wives in there, talks about how great it is to be polygamous.
It's hard to get everything you need from one person. I've been in polyamorous relationships before, and it's just never worked as well as it has with this one. They just all have their qualities. You can find time to just enjoy each other's qualities at different times. When we want to talk fashion, hang with her. When we want to talk gardening and earthy stuff, Joshua. And we want to talk getting stuff done and motivating these two to do things.
When we're herding the cats. Yeah.
So
it's just, it really does take away from any boredness.
It makes life easier.
Yeah.
It's hard to expect so much from one person.
It's not fair to expect to get everything you need from one person.
So, you wonder why you look at societies like Islamic societies where they have more than one woman and women are treated like crap. Of course, because the value of women goes down as you're allowed to marry more of them. If you basically think it's right to have one woman, women become much more valuable. They have much more control in relationships. They have much more power. But I talk a lot about the period of time between the French Revolution and the Victorian age. And the reason I talk about it is because, to me, it's an exact mirror of our time. Not an exact mirror. It is a useful mirror of our time. And I always say that people know that there was a Hitler and they know that there was a fall of Rome. So whenever something happens in history, in the modern history, they say, oh, it's just like the fall of Rome. Oh, it's just like Hitler. But in fact, there were a lot of other things that happened in history too. And one of them was the French Revolution, which did in fact revolutionize the minds of Europe. And they thought it was the age of Aquarius. When I was a kid, there were the 60s, which revolutionized our culture, not always for the better, and we thought that that was the age of Aquarius and everything was going to be great afterwards, and free love was a big thing. Well, back in this time, the turn of the 18th century, free love was also one of the cries of the poets and thinkers and radicals who were following the French Revolution and were not swayed by the fact that the French Revolution was an utter failure, that it led to a terror, and the terror then led to a world war led by Napoleon. And only in Britain did they hold out because, first of all, their navy was able to keep Napoleon at bay, and secondly, they repressed a lot of the revolutionary sentiment. They put people in jail for a lot of their revolutionary sentiment. The poet Shelley left and went to Italy and railed against the marriage. He wrote a poem called Epipsychidion in 1821. Here's just a verse from it. I never was attached to that great sect whose doctrine is that each one should select out of the crowd a mistress or a friend, and all the rest, though fair and wise, commend to cold oblivion, though it is in the code of modern morals and the beaten road which those poor slaves with weary footsteps tread. He's talking about married people, those people who believe in marriage. They're poor slaves with weary footsteps tread, who travel to their home among the dead by the broad highway of the world, and so with one chained friend, perhaps a jealous foe, the dreariest and the longest journey go. That was his description of marriage, the dreariest and the longest journey. And the poet William Blake, who came before Shelley, was also the same. Although Blake had one of the happiest marriages in all of literature, he said, I cry, love, 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 happy, happy love, free as the mountain wind. Can that be love that drinks another as a sponge drinks water, that clouds with jealousy his nights with weepings all the day? This is Blake's description of marriage. To spin a web of age around him, gray and hoary dark, till his eyes sicken at the fruits that hang before his sight, such as self-love that envies all, a creeping skeleton with lamp-like eyes watching around the frozen marriage bed. The fact is that right now, even the left is beginning to realize that marriage is the great equalizer of our time, that the problem 70 years ago, social mobility and protection from poverty. I'm reading, this is an essay on this fact. Charles Murray of the American Enterprise Institute wrote this book, Coming Apart, The State of White America, which I read, and he says in 1960, the poorly and moderately educated were only 10% less likely to be married than the college educated, with both numbers quite high, 84 and 94% respectively. Today, these two groups, the poor and the rich, are separated by a 35% margin, and the gap continues to expand. And even leftists, Jonathan Rauch, writing in the National Journal, notes that marriage is displacing both income and race as the great class divide of the new century. Isabel Sawhill, a senior scholar at the center-left Brookings Institute, boldly and correctly proclaimed some years ago that the proliferation of single-parent households accounts for virtually all of the increase in child poverty since the early 1970s. All of the increase in child poverty. Marriage is a foundational value of the country. That was why people were fighting against gay marriage, not because they hated gays, but because they loved marriage. And the only thing I want to say is conservatives are naturally pessimistic. That's why they're conservatives. They think anything you change, they just follow that change into oblivion. And so they think if all these people are coming out and touting incest and polygamy, that must be the way the country is going. I just want to remind you that after those poems that I read you by Shelley and Blake, the Victorian era came, when sexuality was basically as wrapped around and tight as it could be, and marriage became almost deified. I mean, the idea of the woman was then the angel in the house, they called her. And so just because people are touting this stuff doesn't mean that it's not about to collapse. And I look at the left right now and I see a burning building falling into ashes in this way, in terms of sexuality, as well as in terms of their politics and in terms of the socialism that they're selling. I think that is actually good news, even among all the bad news that we have to suffer every day. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Who we have a guest tomorrow, don't we? It is. Oh yeah, I think we have Christina Hofsum tomorrow, which is she's the best. So we will talk more about this tomorrow. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is the Andrew Klavan Show. We'll see you then.